Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma. This is Kisma, and today is a really special day. As our listeners know, we don't always have guests on the show, and when we do, they are beyond amazing humans. And today we're going to be interviewing Amanda Giacomini, aka 10,000 Buddhas Project. And when she gets on, there's so much to talk about: her mission, her art, her yoga teaching, and we're super excited. Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern day success so that you can have the mindset to get your life and business set.
As always, thank you for tuning in. And if you're new to the podcast, take a quick second to hit the subscribe button in iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. If you want to get the inside info for this and every episode, as well as some free gifts, go to illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. And now let's dive in to get your mindset for your life and business set.
So Amanda, 10,000 Buddhas, welcome to Illumination Podcast.
Oh.
It's so great to have you here.
Hey, Nick and Kisma, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me today.
Absolutely. You've been somebody that I followed on Instagram, and we're going to tell everyone how they can track you down on Instagram. And it was really, I think it was through Trevor Hall. We had Trevor on the podcast, and we've been using his music for years. And we used to have a yoga studio. We'd listen to him. He's just so one of our favorite artists. And then I saw you.
I love him too.
Yeah. And then I saw you, and I was like, what is she doing? What's this person doing? And you're like truly painting, creating 10,000 Buddhas. And I know that you've been recently doing a couple of festivals with Wanderlust. You're a great yoga teacher. You've taught at the White House and yoga festivals, and you've been featured on National Geographic and New York Magazine, Yoga Journal. And there's so much, and we'll have your bio in our show notes. But I want to hear from you. I want to know, like, just recently with the festival Wanderlust you've been at, how that's going. And then we'll dive into your story of like how this all started with you.
My husband, MC Yogi, and I actually went to the first Wanderlust 10 years ago, their 10-year anniversary. They had one festival in California, and we've done so much stuff with them over the years. I think I've been to over 100 Wanderlust events.
Wow.
So we have a long-term relationship with the festival. And when I started this painting Buddhas, they were so supportive. They were one of the first people to hire me. I did a big installation when they opened a studio down in Hollywood, California, and I painted 2 giant murals in their brand new building. It was amazing. Mm-hmm. And then they said, hey, do you think you can do something for the festival? And we came up with a design for a mobile mural, like a mobile wall that they could travel with the festival.
Oh, that's so cool.
And so last year I did it, and I did a big wall that got separated and went on 2 separate trucks to 30 cities. And this year they called me again. They said that was so successful for us, and it was so much fun for the participants. Can you do it again? And I was like, yeah, I can do it again. So I just came back. We did 2 cities, 2 murals in 2 cities in 2 days. So
wow.
Yeah, it was like a Buddha marathon. And I did a wall in New Orleans, and then I flew to Atlanta, and I just did one. And that was really fun because it was the first time I painted live while the event was happening.
That is so cool.
Participants got to see what was happening. While they were doing their run and doing yoga, they saw the evolution of the project. And then after yoga was finished, I was finished, and everybody came and took pictures in front of it. And it was it was so much fun for me. It was so interactive. And
right. It's like performance art, really.
Yeah, it was like performance art, and it was a blast.
Did you have, I saw on your Instagram you had some helpers, some team. Were they people that you brought with you, or did you just kind of pick up a few people as you arrived at Atlanta and New Orleans?
Well, in New Orleans, this woman, Heather Story, helped me. She's actually she organizes all the events for Wanderlust. She has so much responsibility. She's does everything. And she just wanted to help me paint the Buddha. So She and her friend Devin help me. I often get spontaneous volunteers
sure.
as well.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm painting, people will come and give me a hand, which is always nice.
Yeah, it must be nice and beautiful, and they get excited. But I can tell by watching your work, you're pretty much a perfectionist. Like everything is so beautiful. Is there ever a point where you're like, oh my gosh, don't put your handprint there, like on Buddha's belly? You know, watch out, guys.
There's sometimes where you're like, people want to be part of it and have fun, and then I let them do a little, and then I'm like, okay, now it's my turn again.
Yeah, clean it up.
Exactly.
Well, tell us a little bit. I mean, you've been a yoga teacher for how long? And do you still teach, or is that something?
I still teach. My husband and I have a studio here in Point Reyes, California, and we've had it since 2001. So it's 17 years old.
Congratulations.
And I've been teaching. Thank you. So I've been teaching for 18 years, and I've been practicing for about 25 years. So.
That's great. I mean, I know what it takes to run a studio, so I love, and we love MC Yogi too. Tell me a bit about, when did teaching yoga and being this, you've been creative for so long, but how did the 10,000 Buddhas get birthed?
I would say that I was an artist before I became a yogi. I've been painting and making art since I was little. I studied art in college. And then I discovered yoga when I was about 19, and that kind of was like a tsunami of love and passion for my yoga practice that kind of took over. And I really put my art on the back burner for a long time. After I did my yoga teacher training and I started to travel to India to study with Pattabhi Jois when he was alive in the Ashtanga tradition. And my husband and I would go every few years to India to study yoga. And every time we went, we would add on to our trip a little, tourist diversion to go see some of the amazing sites of India. And on one of those trips, we went to visit these ancient caves called the Ajanta Caves, which are in central India. And I had seen these beautiful pictures in a book of these sculptures and paintings inside the caves. And I was really intrigued because right around that time, this longing to make art was coming back, but I wanted to find some way to integrate my practice of yoga with my passion with my love of art. And so when we saw the caves, I learned that it was a whole tradition in ancient India for people to make art that was about devotional art. It was spiritual art, but it was also designed to help the viewer basically achieve the same state that we're trying to achieve in yoga. So when you see the art, you instantly feel uplifted, peaceful, connected to life, connected to the divine. And that just kind of blew my world open, that I could bring these two things that I love.
It's like a culmination for two things that you really loved. Wow. Nick, the Bhajan Caves. It reminds me, Nick and I go to India quite a bit. We visit mostly a place called the Vedanta Academy. It's near Pune. And there are caves as well. Same thing, Hindu tradition. I think then the Buddhists moved in, but they're phenomenal. And on the walls, there's these carvings of stories. And you can, it's amazing. I mean,
they're carved out of solid, like the whole cave system is carved out of solid rock. So it's just phenomenal to be into that space. And there's one in particular that I believe is where the master would have lived all these years later. Like this is centuries and centuries later. There's still something really special there. Like it's just
the energy is even more significant.
With that, it's just really phenomenal.
Well, so Amanda, you saw this, and we know what it's like when you see something. It's like there's a pivot, there's a change, transformation in life. Then, what did you do to start to create your project? How did it begin?
It began actually very slowly. So one of the paintings I saw inside the Ajanta Caves was a mural on the wall of 1,000 little Buddhas sitting together. And I saw it very briefly. When you go on the tour, there's no lights inside the cave, so they use a flashlight, and you're going into these dark caves, and they just kind of quickly scan the wall with the flashlight, and you're just trying to again, as much as you can, beauty. And something about that image of all these little Buddhas sitting together in a matter of seconds, just went into my brain, went into my subconscious, just implanted itself there. And that image just, when I got home, I kept, thinking about it. I kept dreaming about it. And finally I said, gosh, I'm just going to do my own version. I'm so intrigued by this image. It's speaking to me so much that I want to connect with it. And so I just decided to paint it myself. And I got a big piece of wood paneling, like a 4 by 8 foot piece of plywood. And I set about painting all these little Buddhas on it. And that first painting, it really was years. It was about 5 years from when I went to the caves to when I decided to paint my own version. So I think it's really interesting to share that because, you may have some little moment. Literally my time in front of that mural was seconds. And then it took these years to percolate like a seed in the ground, that takes a really long time. And then when it finally came to the surface and I started painting them, I had such an amazing experience painting them. Every time I went to my studio, I felt so peaceful. I felt so happy. I felt like I was in the company of these ancient Buddhas. Yeah. And so once I started that, I couldn't stop. When I finished the painting, that's when I had the idea, I'm just going to keep doing this. This is amazing. And it felt so good to me. I had no idea where it was going to lead me or that anyone would ever, and I had no idea it would turn into a public art project or all the things that's happened with it. But it was more of a personal practice.
Yeah, it was like you had a divine download and it just stayed with you for 5 years. And then do you still have that first painting that you did?
I do, yeah. So the first one is installed in our yoga studio in California.
That's great.
Yeah.
So 10,000, how far along are you in that?
I went to the caves in about 2007. I started painting the Buddhas in 2012, I'm going to say. And then last year in the summer, around August, I started keeping a document, mostly because everyone I ran into would say, what are you up to? And I said, I'm painting 10,000 Buddhas. And they would say, how far along are you? And I said,
it's a very logical question. I'm curious.
Yeah. I just thought I would just do it. And I would kind of know maybe when I got there. But since everyone asked me, I was like, okay, after a few months of painting, I actually went back. I had photographs of everything I had done and I counted up. And so then I kept track. And so last August, it had been a while since I knew I was getting close. But I sat down, I was painting that day. I was working on 3 different canvases. And I was like, I wonder where I'm at, how close I am. And sure enough, that day, the last Buddha I had painted was my 10,000th Buddha.
That's so amazing. Right there it is. There's like the loop of the divine download. There. I love that.
Did you feel a certain sense of accomplishment or a finality to it?
When I set out to do it, I really thought I was taking on a project that was almost insurmountable. I almost wanted it to be insurmountable. I wanted something really big and vast that I could pour myself into, that I could be consumed by. I wanted to be challenged. Yeah. And then when it happened, I was amazed. I didn't know I could do that. And here I've done it. And it was really joyful and made me realize I need to have a bigger goal next time.
Just add zeros on.
I could go bigger. Yeah.
Yeah, just add a zero.
Or 2 or 3. Yeah. That is so cool. Have you painted any of these murals or projects in India?
I have not. We're going to Sri Lanka on Friday, actually. And I have some friends there. We're going to lead a retreat, but I have some friends who live over there part-time, and so they are investigating some walls for me to do in Sri Lanka.
That's great. Is there a favorite that you kind of think about more than others?
I one of the most epic ones for me was a big 3-story building I did in Washington, D.C. And it was a really special wall. Some friends have a studio in Washington, D.C., Flow Yoga Center. And they reached out and said, we'd love to bring your Buddha project to Washington. I thought that would be great. When I went to visit them, they had this incredible building. And right away, I was like, oh, this building would be amazing. It was three and a half stories, a red brick color, and it didn't have any buildings next to it. So if I painted it, you could see it almost from like a mile away because it had a big exposed face beside of the building. So they started talking to their landlord. And the landlord was interested, but he is from Ethiopia and Orthodox Christian. And he said, I love these Buddhas. I think it's a cool project, but is there any way that she can make it more, so if you're not a Buddhist, like in his mind, you had to be a Buddhist to like really get into to it, which I find is not really the case. But he said, is there any way for her to make it more like universal so that everyone feels connected? And so for that wall, we came up with this idea of doing in between all the Buddhas, I stenciled symbols for all the major religions. And that was just really powerful. It was like this collaborative thing. It was also one of the walls I did where the Buddhas are in skin color. And so we did every kind of skin color, from darkest black to cocos to all the reddish, yellowish, palest, all the shades you could imagine were represented. And then all the different religions were represented. It was also the most challenging wall I've ever done because it was so high up. We needed some to get permitting to get the alley closed down for the 3.5 it. And so it was a lot of personal challenges. It was 98 degrees while I was painting. I'm afraid of heights, and it was 70 feet in the air. I had to learn how to drive the big boom lift by myself.
It's like going into the Ashtanga Series 3.
Yeah, it was. It was seriously terrifying, honestly, and daunting. Even though I had done quite a few murals before that, I'd never done that one that big. And so fast. I was painting, 14-hour days to finish. And then the whole beautiful thing of collaborating with the owner to make it, it was so special. The last day I researched like an Orthodox cross that would be the kind that they would use in Ethiopia. And I put it really close, like eye level. So when he goes to work in the morning, his business is on the first story that, I did a little one just for him.
So great.
So it was just, I don't know. It was a really special part of the journey. And on top of all that, the third day of painting, 3 Tibetan monks showed up. A woman knew I was doing the project. She invited them. They came and they did a whole ceremony that morning to awaken the presence of the Buddha within the painting. And they chanted and sang and did incense and this beautiful ceremony and blessing to wake up the Buddhas. And they said from that moment on, anyone who would see this painting, whether if they walked by it in the street or if they saw it in a video or in a photo, that their suffering would be diminished.
Oh, I love
that's
that. Beautiful. Oh, that's beautiful. The chills.
Do you subscribe to a particular religion, or are you kind of like us, just more philosophers in that respect?
Yeah, I would say I'm a yogi. I'm a yogi, and I'm a lover of the Buddha, and I'm a lover of the teachings and the stories and the beauty of that tradition. But I don't ascribe to any particular.
I mean, the Buddha is, I know we work a lot in the energy field, and it's like the presence of the energy, right? I mean, Nick, you have an interesting way that you describe this on Wesak.
Well, the Wesak Festival, that's coming up actually.
Right.
Well, the Buddha, to me anyway, like the Buddha is the representation of the divine wisdom, that pure wisdom of knowing. And on Wesak, it's like, there's a special place in India, so the tradition goes, there's a special place in India and the Buddha comes and he blesses the earth through this. But basically it's so intense that it basically kind of like fries the circuit board. So it brings in the Christ energy, and that divine compassion and essentially filters divine wisdom through divine compassion so that we humble humans can actually integrate that without, without frying ourselves out energetically. I mean, that's kind of what's happening. So it made me kind of think, this is something I've been thinking about, because I think the same, I think the truth is the truth. And that truth is being revealed from different aspects throughout all of the different religions. They all have a thread of that in a certain way. And when it becomes dogmatic is actually when free thinking stops. And that's a real problem, because then, you need the free thinking and the truly liberal education in order for your own mind to process that and to integrate it into your life and into your cellular level in the way that you really need to understand that, so that it really gets in there. The Christian teachings have their own bent on that, and Christ as a teacher and a leader, I think, is incredible. And what that kind of made me think about was, and then, you've got the Bodhisattva Kuan Yin as well, and that sense of divine compassion or divine grace that comes along with that, and then how to kind of create that for yourself. So what it really made me think about is this like stepping down of energy and the different levels that we can access that, like kind of like different access points. And the Buddha just being that truly pure divine wisdom, which is reflected in, he calls it the middle path, but that pure objectivity of, not that the one, which I think is really incredible, but also really intense.
To me, I think that's part of why I love this image of all the Buddhas sitting together. It's not one savior. It's an image of community. It's an image of we're all equals in this, and we all have a responsibility to uplift ourselves and then support each other. And I think even if you know nothing about the Buddha or Buddhism or anything, I think art it seems to speak to people on a subconscious level about when they see these Buddhas sitting together, they're getting that, they're getting that message of like, wow, what it's like to practice peacefully with other people and how supportive that is and how that does uplift each other without even knowing anything about it. And I think such the cool thing about art, and I'm so glad
it's beautiful
that I didn't put my art completely aside forever. But I think it's a way to integrate it.
It's like a bypass, in a certain way, as it bypasses that thinking mind that like wants to put the labels on it, and it gives them direct access to like the true energy or that piece behind it, and however they connect to that. I think that's really cool.
I love it. Being a yogi and being an artist that is really representing some true divine creation, how do you manage to be in this world? I mean, part of it obviously is you teach yoga, you practice yoga, you create, but it seems to be an interesting time on our planet. Definitely we're light years ahead of many different centuries, yet we can all see when things are going upside down or sideways. What's your means of practice to either handle that in your own world or help others?
This is where I'm so grateful for the yoga practice, because yoga is an embodied practice. It's about being able to be centered and move and operate in the world consciously. And so I think there's the tools, I think, of meditation, of creating stillness to when we need to, when the world gets crazy, we need to recenter ourselves so we don't get tossed around by it. So I feel like the stillness brings us in and we can reground, and then the yoga helps us to operate and actually go back out into the world from a more steady place within our own self. So I find that there's like a beautiful flux of like internal rebalancing and then being able to move back and be in the world with more awareness.
I love that you say that, because I think there can be a lot of spiritual practitioners. I know we see it down here in SoCal of kind of checking out. I'm going to go meditate for 3 hours, but that's not like we're on the planet. We have a body. And if we're not grounded, we can't use our body to do what we're here to do. So I love how you describe that, of the meditation being able to create that stillness, and then the kind of redefining who we are and taking it, integrating it into the world with the yoga. It definitely, that's very powerful.
One of the things I also learned from studying those Ajanta caves is all the past life stories of the Buddha. There are these ancient tales. Most of them are animal stories, and they're called Jataka tales. And in them, the tales are teaching these principles that the Buddha was trying to teach about how we can be more kind, more compassionate, more wise, more patient, more peaceful, more honest. Very simple things, but those are all qualities that are not about an internal experience so much as how we are with others, how we are in the world. I mean, it is how we are with ourselves too, I guess, but it's not just about escaping and finding a blissful inner state. It's really, can you then be more, can you be patient? You know,
right.
You know,
can we not yell at our soundboard?
Yeah, all the things. Or if we do have those human things, which are constantly going to come up, how quickly can we get over them? You know, how quickly,
so true.
Can, you know, because it's not like we're going to eradicate anger ever from our lives. It will come up, but how intense is it? How quickly can we get over it? How quickly can we,
that's so good.
Correct a situation if we did something stupid or said something mean? How quickly can we apologize?
Right. And just let go of it. Yeah. I think sometimes it's actually the ego that will have someone hold on to an event and kind of relive it. And it's the lesson is learned if we allow it to come in. And the most powerful place is to be able to, like you said, make amends, correct, and get on to the next experience. So that one is a better experience. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you ever had an argument with someone and you're really angry at them and all of a sudden they're like, you know what? I hear you and I'm really sorry. I see what you're saying. I mean, it just dissolves everything. There's nowhere to go, right?
Exactly.
It just like crumbles. Everybody just melts. Like with that self-awareness. It just, it's incredible.
It is. Yeah.
It's something, it speaks to something that I've been studying a lot, is the law of non-resistance, you know, and how to really and truly be in a flow with the world and not, because when you're resistant, like the world will crush you in a moment, you know, but when you really truly become non-resistant, well, you can navigate with so much more ease. I'm curious, we talked about this with Trevor a little bit too, and as we get people on who are, you know, deeply into their spiritual practice and have been at it for a while, I'm always kind of curious the take on it is, because we've had a lot of conversations about the role of, or the use or misuse of drugs in spiritual awakening. You know, ayahuasca trips, acid back in the day, or whatever it might be. I know that there's people who are really proponents of that, and I'm always curious what our guests might think about that. You know, so what do you think about that? Is there value in it? Is it destructive? Like, what do you think?
I'm not someone who uses drugs in my spiritual practice. I would say maybe I don't know. I guess everybody's different, right? For some people, I could imagine it might crack them open a little bit in a way that was necessary. But I do think people can get hooked on that as a method for having a spiritual experience. And some people have just more addictive personalities than others. You know, some people can try something once or twice, get a lot out of it, and move on. And really learn, and other people get stuck in a habitual use that becomes destructive. So I don't feel, for me personally, it's not something that really works for me. I feel blissed out enough.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's kind of what
I practice.
Yeah, we all, we sort of want the real thing, and I know personally, I think there can be a danger when someone uses something and it's extravagant in its experience. Like you said, making them seek that experience again. We're really, some of those most beautiful moments of continuing to realize more of who we are and having that awakening can be so subtle, really subtle and really quiet. And it's not always a big blow up in fireworks, is it?
Right. And what you said earlier, Nick, too, about, sometimes an extreme energy can blow our circuits, right?
Right.
And I think that can happen with drugs. Sometimes you don't know the dose, or it could just be way too much. And really, like, the downshifting to be able to, I think, like a steady stream of conscious, to funnel that, I don't know what you call, funnel that spiritual energy in a more consistent way tends to be more useful for most people. Like, just to get through the day, get through life, get through a tough situation, rather than these big, like, you were saying about some big extravagant, like, fireworks kind of awakening.
It's got to go blow it out, or it's like, I don't know, but it's not as like the small increments of daily practice is definitely not as sexy, to certain people. Like, that requires discipline. Right. It requires a real, really the fortitude of a true seeker to stay in that path, no matter whether it's related to religion or not, but that willingness to work on yourself really does require a high amount of discipline. And that's, it's not something that everybody has. Word. Yeah.
No, and I think it's almost like a dirty word in America. We're like, we want to be free. And somehow we think discipline is opposite of freedom, but discipline can be freedom.
Okay.
It can lead to freedom. And that's not an easy sell, like, from a PR perspective.
Right.
It's truly not.
Like, trust me, if you do this regularly, then you'll feel really, free and happy. It's like,
I know, and people get so distracted.
Take something.
I actually have the T-shirt. There's a podcast, the Jocko podcast. Jocko's an ex-Navy SEAL and does like leadership training, and that's one of the things they talk about is discipline equals freedom. It's one of the principles in his book as well. I went out and bought the T-shirt, and I wear it out, and it's so like funny. But it's like, it's, you'll see some people looking at it every once in a while, like, what's that? Like, you must be, like, hardcore or something. It's like, no, it's not like that at all. It's like, actually, discipline gives, it's that road, like the ability and the framework for you to actually have freedom, a support system around that. Nowhere is that more important than in your spiritual practice, because you're turning inward. And if you don't have that kind of structure or framework to it, and the discipline to take it in measured doses, then you're off down the rabbit hole before you know it. And nowhere is that more evident than in Encinitas.
Oh, yeah.
Just a few miles south.
God bless them.
Yeah, no, but it's really fascinating to watch, this spiritual or quote unquote conscious community that will really and truly send themselves in circles, looking for the next fix, the next spiritual fix, whether that's through the experience that they have, and there are a lot of people that are super into the experiences, or whether it's just like, I want to know the next thing and I want to know the next thing, and this total overconsumption of information, which I think, I don't know what you think about that, but to me, when somebody overconsumes information, what was that term they used yesterday? Educated beyond their intelligence.
Yeah.
Right. Which I think is really fascinating, because then it's okay, well, you know all this stuff, but you're not acting any of it out. And then it becomes an actual burden on them. I don't know. Have you seen any of that through, being around the communities and the festivals?
What you were saying made me realize that in some ways, this is why, for me, painting the Buddhas it is a discipline. I'm painting the same image over and over and over and over again. And this practice of painting now, I think I just passed 13,000 Buddhas. I could speak to my own experience of, it has not been boring once, it seems to get deeper and more subtle and more, I'm like, it's constantly revealing different things to me about the imagery, about putting this message in the world, about my own inner mind. It keeps sending me back to research deeper into Buddhist philosophy, which keeps uncovering more interesting things for myself. So I can attest in my own life that sticking to this one practice has been really, really powerful. Yeah. And if I had bobbed around and tried a bunch of different things, I don't think I would be having the same experience.
Yeah, painting giraffes would not have worked for you. They might have been cute. I'm sure they'd be cute, but no. Oh, I love it.
But you know, I understand that maybe I might have a personality trait that works for that kind of repetition.
Yeah, totally. However, I mean, the artist, you know, and your method of the way you practice Ashtanga, there's so much discipline there. Yet I think even for those out there listening, they've heard us talk about this so much. It's so worth it to stay, you know, pick something and stay on it. Something that's truthful, and because it will reveal itself, like you said, in deeper ways. I mean, it just will. The layers unpeel and unravel. And we are in this information age where there's so much coming at us. And there's a lot of mistruths coming at us and confusion. So when someone can find a means of study or practice or creating and it works, it is like get across the bridge, because I think the benefits are huge with that.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's the FOMO that kind of messes people up. You know,
fear of missing out.
Oh, well, okay, so I've been doing this for a while and it's working, but, you know, maybe you hit kind of a roadblock with it, or, you know, like that's normal for anything that you do, is like hit a plateau or just like, okay, I've been, and then it's like, okay, well, I guess I've, you know, used that one up. I better get on to the next thing. But it's like, that's where the real treasure is. Yeah. You know, that's where the real gift is in, you know, that steadfastness of like, I'm going to stay on track here and find what's beyond this. You know, that's the beauty of it, I think. But it's not for everybody, and that's okay.
That's okay. Amanda, before we go, I always love to ask our guests, is there anything that you've yet to do in life on this round that you haven't told anybody? It's kind of like in the back of your mind, like one day I really want to do this.
I was in Japan last summer, and someone took me to this temple of 1,000 Buddhas. They knew about my 10,000 Buddhas. They're like, I'm going to take you to this place. And inside this temple, there were 1,000 standing Buddhas, these giant, like slightly larger than life standing Buddhas, and they each had about 40 arms, and in each hand a weapon. It was like an army of light, you know. And I recently had a friend who was going to Japan. I said, you have to go to this temple. And in researching it again, I realized that it was the temple of Kannon, which in Japanese was like the Japanese version of Kuan Yin. And that these were female Buddhas armed to the teeth. It was like a female army of Buddhas. You know, for me, it's still something I'm very slow. I don't know if you've noticed, but it takes me like years. I see something, it takes me years to like process it and figure out what I want to do with it. And, you know, it takes a long time for me to figure it out. But I've had this vision of, I don't know how to do it, but how can I make like a vision of like a really tall building, like a 5 or 6 story building with like one giant standing female Buddha with all these arms and all this. I'm like, and I don't know how to do it. I don't know where to do it.
I'm pretty sure you just called it in. I'm pretty sure you just called it in. So
I've been secretly visualizing it, and you know, it's kind of like it'll just be a journey to see if I can figure out.
I'm sure you will. I love that. And thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. And it's perfect timing, because I know there's been a lot for women and the pendulum's been swinging, and, you know, I know we're going to land front and center in a lot of wisdom. So what a great, that's amazing. That is so cool.
I mean, that's a whole other topic that we'll have to bring up some other time. I would love to talk about that more as far as like, how men and women are playing together.
In a spiritual context, I think it's really important to show the world like these female bodhisattvas came in for a reason, to prove that women could be equally as enlightened as men, and it didn't matter what gender we were born into. Does not impede our spiritual ability or our spiritual evolution. This, for me, I feel compelled now to continue that message, and I think it would be really powerful to have more street art with these female Buddhas is like, guess what?
Here we are.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful for you sharing that.
Thank you for sharing. That's great. Where do you go next?
I guess it's not a secret anymore.
I know. Sorry. Welcome to our world. But it's, what, you go to Sri Lanka, you and your husband have your retreat. That sounds really cool. How long will that be?
It's 12 days at an Ayurvedic center in South India, southern province in Sri Lanka. And we're going to go on a Buddhist pilgrimage, and I'm going to tell in the afternoon I teach yin yoga and tell the Jataka tales, the stories I was telling you about, the animal stories. And I'm really excited. I love when people take time out. I know it takes so much to go on these trips. It's far. It requires resources. You have to organize everything at home, but it's so transformational to dedicate that much time to your practice with no distractions.
Right.
It is. Yeah.
So it's really, it's not frivolous. It's very radical what I see happens to people.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to be in that. Yeah.
That's great. And then for our listeners, I know they can find you on Instagram, 10,000 Buddhas. And website, is it 10,000buddhas.com?
Yeah, it's 1 and 4 zeros Buddhas, both on Facebook, Instagram, and my website.
Yeah, and you've got some beautiful prints and scarves and things for sale on your website, so people go shopping.
Yeah, go shopping. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask is how can we support, you know? And,
I saw a scarf. I'll probably buy it today.
Yeah, that's great. And the art that I sell through my site helps me fund a lot of the public art that I do pro bono. So,
that's great.
It's great and appreciated.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time to be here with us. We so appreciate you. And I know I can't wait to see one of your walls or murals in person. Like we're going to have to go.
We'll have to get them down to San Diego.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah. San Clemente. Hey, thanks for jamming with us today. And if you enjoy Illumination Podcast, please go ahead and share it with someone you love. Give us a rating, review, download our podcast. And remember, you can find us at illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. Talk to you soon. Namaste.